This is we are sitting too close to each other. But, Okay, all right, let's go.
Welcome back to another episode of Can You Not? This is our third episode. We are planning to launch these actually all at once. So if you're listening to this, you probably have two other that you can listen to if you so wish. I'm Joe. I do movie things.
I'm Amber. I try and do engineering things if my college would let me.
My name's Jesse. I just lost out on an internship. Hire your boy.
And ultimately, we each have a topic that we bring to the table. We have 10 minutes to talk about it. And none of us know what the other person has brought. But we just discuss it. That's pretty much as simple. I think I'm going to go first this time because I have not gone first yet. The topic I have for today is, at what point do we censor ourselves when it comes to humor? Because I think this is a really bubbling topic lately. I see it discussed in a lot of different ways because especially now that like people are questioning this whole kind of PC kind of idea or movement, that people are saying that, well, you're taking away our right to make these really offensive jokes. And so I guess, I think it's kind of a balancing act. I guess where I typically draw the line is I feel like you can make fun of any idea. I feel like that's completely on the table. I just think we do kind of have a little bit of a duty to try and not hurt people in the process. And I don't know, like I feel like I want to be as inclusive as possible if I make something. I want as many people as possible to enjoy it. And I feel like there's still ways of creating humor without like really potentially hurting someone in a terrible way. Now I know there's things like I think South Park and stuff who sometimes balance that very well because they can make fun of an offensive thing, but do it in such a way that you can tell that they're not for this offensive thing, I guess. But I don't know. What do you two think? Where do you draw the line when it comes to humor?
So what I find interesting about this is when people go down a slippery slope of offensive humor, it's more of the person telling it than the content itself. So like if a white guy is saying some kind of race-baiting humor, people are going to take offense to it because he doesn't have the privilege of actually saying the joke.
It depends on the person.
Or if like a guy is saying some kind of misogynist kind of joke, masochist kind of joke.
Whereas if the girl he was talking about had made that joke about herself, it would be received better because it's perceived as like, oh, she has a good sense of humor, or
it's just the point of the power of the speaker, right? Like right. That goes with anything more than just comedy. I don't believe in censorship, but I think we're in a climate right now where we don't need a censor, because if the general public finds an issue with what you're saying, you're gonna lose out. Like you're gonna lose out big. You're gonna lose out really big. Right? Yeah, like definitely. I mean, think about this: the rise of Hannibal Buress, right? Mm-hmm. He made fun of Bill Cosby. He was one of the people that outed Bill Cosby, and now he has a show on Comedy Central.
Right.
If we were to put him under the same context and be like, "We're gonna censor you," he wouldn't have a career. I mean, all these comedians would not have a career. Right. Because most of them borderline go offensive.
Well, maybe it's because, kind of like you were saying, like he shot up at Bill Cosby because he's this big public figure and he was a relatively unknown comedian. Yeah. So I think maybe that's a big key of it, is you're shooting up at a higher idea or power as opposed to shooting down, which just makes you look like a jerk.
I would also say, before Amber drops a truth bomb, because she has the eyes, she has the fire in her eyes.
You can see the gears turning.
Yeah. We're in a pretty PC society, and especially with comedy, actually, I think, in a sense. Because, like, the top comedians to me really, like, they'll talk on social issues, but, like, we were talking earlier, Aziz Ansari's stand-up is not really comedy. It's, like, social commentary, and it's very sociological.
Could you define PC for me super fast?
So, like...
I'm confused.
Politically correct.
Oh, that's what that.
You know what I mean?
My brain was going persons of. Isn't that POC? Like I was so.
No.
It's sorry, we should have explained that to the audience too.
We did.
Yeah, hi audience, thank you.
But like to me, it's like they just jump into the issues, and I think that is what is pulling people into comedy.
Yeah, you even see people like, I don't know, like Patton Oswalt. Like, you're right, like a lot of these top comedians right now are speaking about these topics in a way that makes them interesting. Or look at the success of, satire, people like Colbert and John Oliver who are using that, literally that's their main thing, is to poke fun at these social topics and stuff. I don't know.
So I feel like censoring isn't the issue, because offensive people are going to be offensive, and especially people who are trying to do it to be funny. Like they're going to be people who laugh at that. But when you don't censor people, first of all, it makes you aware of who's not funny, and you can ignore them. But people who are able to make a higher caliber of joke are the people who get listened to. It's like, that's why The Daily Show is so big. That's why Colbert is so big. That's why these intelligent people who have a lot to say, who are just shooting like on the lowest bar, like making fun of the most base thing that they can think of, like woman jokes, or like I mean, even your mom jokes, like they can be funny. Like that kind of joke can be funny, but that's not what you look for when you're looking for a professional comedian. You know what I mean? Like it just has to do with the integrity of the joke. Like, yeah, the jokes that are based on really base things can be funny, but is that really what we want to pay people to tell? You know?
Yeah. Does it get to a point though, because like I think about something like the success of the game Cards Against Humanity, which like I was like totally on board with for a time, and then I really started thinking about why I thought some of those things were funny, and then I realized that a lot of the things that were funny were just the fact that they were taboo in some way, or were so offensive, but it felt like I was kind of being superior to the joke. I felt like I was above the joke, but at the same time I was indulging the joke completely. I just didn't realize it because of how the game is arranged.
But like I said before, right? The power of the speaker versus the content. It's the power of the players versus the cards.
Right.
I think it depends, right? Like if we were to play Cards Against Humanity, we would know the players aren't intentionally trying to be evil or unjust or racist or sexist in any single way. It's the players that play.
And a lot of it too, with humor is shock factor. Like humor is literally a response. Like when you laugh at something, you're responding because you weren't expecting it. So like Cards Against Humanity is a lot of shock factor, and it's funny for that reason, and that's why playing it over and over again like 5 times in a week doesn't work, because it's not shocking anymore. Right. So I feel like that's what Cards Against Humanity like works with, is like, look at this incredibly shocking thing, look at all these weird ways you can put them together, like this is super weird and hilarious, and you're all drunk, so it's great, you know, like it just kind of plays on shock. I think.
Now, what do you think about people who kind of take this whole thing, and who take offense at the idea of being politically correct? Because, like I said, from my side of things, when I think about it, like, there are people who overreact, obviously. I'm not trying to make it sound like, you know, like we should be totally, like, in this bubble or anything like that. But at the same time, like, I feel like anytime people even make an attempt to be like, inclusive in some way, you know, they'll redact a statement and say, I shouldn't have said that. And people just go livid on these people because they say, no, it was just a joke. People should lighten up. They should get a sense of humor.
Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, that's one person you could put in the argument, but I can think of lots of examples of things where people who are, I don't know, what do you think about that? Like, what is the line when it comes to that? And is that something that's negatively affecting us?
I mean, the line is, who are you as a character outside of your jokes? We're in a media climate where we know the comedian more than just the face value. Like back in the day, we would hear Chris Rock and be like, okay, that's just Chris Rock. We don't know him as a person. Like we know Nick Offerman as a person. You know what I mean? Like it's the evolution with technology. So like I said before, like the person that's saying the joke means more than the joke nowadays. And it really just depends, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was. Could you tell me again?
I guess even more so than outside of the context of jokes. I guess like people who are trying to be inclusive.
Oh, it was about people who get upset when people try and be politically correct.
Yeah, just in general, like not even with jokes, but just
I feel
in
like,
their language or in their
I feel like
presentations or
I don't know. I feel like that's understandable, because when you try and soften all these edges and make everything great for everybody, you know, like everybody's going to get offended about something, but people who get upset because people are trying to be inclusive or people are trying to be professional to the point where they know that, or they're confident that they're not actively going to offend anybody. I suppose in comedy that kind of makes sense to me because so many jokes are based on stereotypes and they're based on that kind of thing. So saying, well, why would you tell us to be politically correct? Like, how are we even going to make our living now? Like, when so much of comedy is based on that kind of thing, I guess that kind of makes sense.
So, yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But people who just get upset in general when somebody tries to make things politically correct are silly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're also not progressive.
Right.
Yeah.
And on the other side of things, there are people, I think, who are too quick to call out people, especially if the person getting that wrath actually is a pretty open-minded, decent person.
You mean people get upset when people aren't politically correct?
Yeah, even though like maybe that person didn't know. Like maybe if you had told them in a nice way, hey, I don't think it's a good way how you said that. Like they in some cases they might be, oh okay, I didn't realize that, and they correct themselves. Oh okay, wow. Okay,
darn. I had things to say about that. Oh well.
Oh, do we want to summarize it?
You summarize it. Well, wait, don't you want to wait till the end to summarize it?
Well, no, because we just kind of. I just thought if you.
Oh, you mean I want to summarize it?
Yeah, summarize it.
I was gonna say that I think the difference between those people and the other people are that people who get upset when people aren't politically correct are upset because they're so afloat in their passions that they can't see things from a different point of view.
Yeah.
So they just get offended immediately when people touch on the thing that they love.
Plus, it takes a lot more effort to think about what you're going to say as opposed to just saying base things that you want to say. I think.
Yeah.
But
cool.
Anyway, topic done. All right. Who do we have? Jesse, would you like to go?
I don't think I've ended yet. Wow, all these different orders we're doing. Fancy.
Jesse, you're on the clock.
Okay, so I decided to, I've been presenting some fluff topics, so I figured I would drop a truth bomb.
Hey,
like
for all those
Amber.
people who were in the styrofoam business, that was not a fluff topic. That was
I mean,
gravely
I think
serious.
styrofoam is one of the fluffiest topics that you can have.
technically speaking, from an engineer, from an engineering student. So the topic I brought up today, or I'm bringing up, past tense, present tense, let's learn, is Texas basically went through with their 11th execution this year. The person that they killed, he was guilty of killing a former missionary during an $8 robbery when he was a teenager.
$8?
Yes. Juan Garcia, 35, today received lethal injection at 6 p.m. Central Time. And it was for the 1998 murder of Hugh Solano. And it just goes through this. He was denied he was denied so many rights, and he basically got to the point where he said if it's God's will, it's his will. And he said he accidentally shot Solano during the struggle of trying to steal money as a teenager. And basically this is the saddest part. The victim's family has forgiven him, and they've pled for him not to get the lethal injection, but the state of Texas is already going through with it. And today he died. So what I am trying to bring up is, what is the appropriate amount of justice for these crimes? And is 25 years basically the same as life in prison? Is 25 years the same as execution?
Yeah.
Is like what is the value of our lives with this?
Well, I'm against the death penalty entirely. Like, even just looking at it monetarily, it doesn't make sense because it's cheaper to keep them alive and feed them than it is to go through with all the stuff you have to go through in order to kill someone. But that's nuts. Do you know what rights he was denied? Like,
it wasn't, I guess it's not rights, but it was, he was rejected parole like a few times, and he was also rejected his plea for mental instability, and they voted him off so many times, and they weren't even interested in hearing his story and hearing the victim's family plead. That's the craziest thing to me.
I guess, I think the death penalty can be kind of nonsensical in a lot of different ways. Like, first of all, it just seems somewhat barbaric to be like, you did something bad, I'm going to kill you, basically. It appeals to a very inner sort of sense of justice that we want, I guess, but...
very carnal.
Yeah, and then just going to that idea of, like, some people don't fear death. For some people, that isn't the worst punishment they can get, and for some people, that they don't care either way. And it's... So how is that really a punishment when no one's really getting anything out of it except for the roaring, the metaphorical roaring crowd who wants justice? And I once read a book about like the last words of people, and like people who died in all different particular ways, but there were quite a few that were on the death penalty, and that was really transformative for me in terms of, you know, we want to dehumanize people in so many different ways, and that's a very extreme case, obviously, where it's very easy to dehumanize someone, but I just feel like that's, like I said, I feel like it's just such a barbaric and ultimately useless solution, and even just the number of people here who are falsely accused, and I'm sure they probably get more actual accused people. I'm certain that it still works in favor most of the time, but at the same time, there's a vast number of people I've read about who have been falsely accused and they didn't discover it until after the fact, or they just barely discovered it like a month before they were supposed to be executed. And it's because sometimes these people get caught in a situation where there's so little evidence one way or the other that they can't even defend themselves, and maybe one little thing gets found. But
I mean, I guess the other question I want to bring up is, should this be a state's right or should this be a federal law? Like, to me, because it's a state's decision, right? Because there were states at time that would have a firing squad. There would be like different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, should all the states participate in the same kind of treatment when it comes to sentencing?
I don't know. Like I said, as sort of sentencing, like for the death penalty, or do you just mean in general?
I mean, like, in this case, it's death penalty. Like, should it be a state's right? I don't think it should be a state's right at all.
I don't think it should be anybody's right. I just think it's ridiculous that somebody kills somebody or somebody does something horrendous and the immediate thing is turn around and do something horrendous. Only now we're paying for it.
Exactly.
With,
I guess if you tried to make it a federal decision, it's still going to be on the same, like, you're still going to have the same makeup of the country of people who believe in it and people who don't. So, like, even getting to that decision would be something I can't see it, you know, and maybe it would tip towards the favor of death penalty, and then we probably wouldn't be any better for it, I guess.
In the article, it brought up two other instances that either it was a botch or it happened this week, and the other states were Missouri and Oklahoma. So, like, this is basically the same region and almost a similar culture.
Yeah.
It's a crazy...
Not to stereotype.
Not to stereotype, but it just happens to be, and I just find it very crazy.
You mean there were two other executions this week?
There was two other executions this week. Well, one of them got botched because it got...
botched?
It got botched, meaning it got messed up. They sent the wrong drugs for lethal injection.
What? How do you even do that?
But stuff like that seems to happen a lot too. You read about how it was supposed to take 5 minutes and somehow they messed it up and it takes like 2 hours.
Dying for 2 hours,
and that's just, again, incredibly inhumane. Like, I just...
And especially since, like, that actually kind of makes sense to me. Doctors can't perform this because they've taken the oath. Like, they can't
the
hurt
Hippocratic
people.
oath.
Yeah, they can't. They can't. So,
that.
like, the people who are administering this, like...
Very suspect.
Like, that they don't know what they're doing wouldn't be a shock to me. So, like, if they miss a vein and the person's dying for 2 hours...
And do they care? Probably not.
Well,
and does that person have rights at that point?
Yeah.
Weren't they sentenced a painless and immediate death? And they're not getting that either.
Right.
That's a very questionable circumstance.
Yeah.
I'm against all of it. I don't know. I know people do horrendous things, but I don't think an eye for an eye is gonna fix anything. It's always the healing approach that works best. Like, in every other country where there are issues, they don't build bigger prisons, they build nicer rehabilitation centers.
Exactly.
And that's how you fix this.
And it does get particularly troublesome when you are talking about things revolving around sexual abuse in particular, you know, because of all different ages and genders, and it's just that I think is even a touchier thing for a lot of people, because it's really easy to say, well, these people aren't people, because it seems that way. It certainly does with how absolutely despicable some of those crimes are. You can have
hope, but hope isn't jurisdiction.
And there are people who are very psychopathic.
There's no precedences in hope.
Right. And it's when you're dealing with people who are psychopathic, it's really difficult, because, I mean, at that point, there's only so much you can do sometimes, and it's really...
Have better resources for these people. And here's the other thing. Yeah, like, here's the other thing. Stop funding private prisons.
For real.
That's a new slavery, by the way. Whole Foods, where are you getting those vegetables from? the inmates are growing them.
And they're getting paid like
37 cents.
That's ridiculous.
No, not even that. I think it's like crazy 17 cents. Something crazy like that. So like, let's stop that. Let's actually help out these communities, and let's stop targeting ethnic minorities. Like, let's start with that. Let's have fair sentencing.
Yeah.
And let's realize that 5 years in prison could change someone's life.
Especially if they actually have help and they're not growing whole foods, vegetables, like.
Right, because then they're in the system for life.
People always want to point out to people who do get out and then commit a crime or something as examples of the system gone wrong, but
that's literally what the system's trained.
And that's literally
to keep them.
And that's going to get all the media press. Are there newspaper articles about this guy was reformed after 5 years in prison and he did a bunch of community service and he says he's turned a new leaf? Like, does anyone ever report about those? No. So you're always going to hear about that.
And the other problem too is like, where do they get spit back out into? What kind of people get arrested? The kind of people who can't get jobs, the kind of people who don't have any way else to get food or money. So if you spit them back out into the same system, obviously, and you don't give them any means of carrying on in a different way, what else do you expect them to do? Like,
and let's remember, like, the critiques of having these resources for people is that we're going to be paying more in taxes, but we're paying these prisons. They're already taking our tax money.
Yeah.
This whole argument and conversation is flawed.
Right.
All these other countries around the world, the maximum is sometimes 10 years, 2 years, 5 years. Unless
you're in Russia, and then you're basically in the Saw movies. They have some pretty scary, from what I hear about. You read about
like we were saying before, we're a show that's not predicated on stereotypes. Forgive Joe.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Russians.
Jigsaw. Would you like to play a game?
Shirtless, but not on a horse, on a tricycle.
Russian Jigsaw. He's wearing a Putin mask instead.
Which of these shots is vodka and which is arsenic? You'll never know.
You have 1 minute, go.
And then Joe starts the timer.
Okay, that was not supposed to be a stereotype on the Russian people as a whole. That was merely, I have seen documentaries about Russian prisons and they didn't look fun.
Prison never looks fun.
Okay.
Either way, rest in peace to Juan Garcia.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. Amber, you and your penguin socks have anything to share with us?
Yeah.
And glasses. Penguins with glasses.
Yeah, they're wearing some of them are wearing sunglasses. Yeah, see, yellow. Okay, they can't see that. Anyway, do you wanna start the timer?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to.
I was doing pretty good on that. No, there you go. Go
okay,
ahead.
So I have a really general thing that was bothering me a lot that you already saw. In fact, I saw that you saw it. College is hard enough with all of the money that you have to pay and all the classes that you have to take. But I've noticed, and this isn't an isolated case, because I got a lot of responses from this when I posted about it online today. Colleges require that you take all these stupid courses that you don't learn anything in. And I'm not talking about like a math major has to take a social studies class and they're upset because it's not relevant. That's an entirely different discussion. What I'm talking about is when you're required to take a class that you show up, you don't learn anything. You continue to not know anything, and you can still pass the test somehow, but the teacher grades you for attendance, so you have to show up and waste your time. So basically what you're doing is you're throwing money at a college, you're showing up, the teacher's marking down that you showed up, and then you get a credit. And it's this monstrous waste of time. It's an incredible waste of money. And I don't understand why this is a thing, and I just don't understand. So, have you guys had classes like these before?
I think everybody has.
Yeah.
Every one of us has.
Yeah.
I mean, extremely every one of us, because we went to the same institution before we transferred.
And even after I'm transferred, like, it's not any better. Like, I'm still taking these fluff classes that I'm not learning anything.
Same here. We both have our associate degrees at this point, so we should be like getting things that are relevant to our degree.
All three of us.
Yeah, all three of us, and yet we're still taking these classes that are.
So like I realize that colleges want money, But a thing.
Shocker.
Yeah. Whoa. So like they want you to take 4 years worth of classes. So, but a lot of the times the class that I'm in, that I'm not learning anything in theory, should be something that I want to know. Like I took a class at the other college that we were at, and it was supposed to be learning about like sensors and how different kinds of sensors work and different kinds of materials act, and how basically you can get feedback in like an assembly line or in a factory or in some kind of manufacturing thingy. And I showed up to this class and I was like, this could be kind of cool, and I didn't learn anything, and that was actually super important for the associates that I got, and I still didn't learn anything. And I just, how do we, is there any way to fix this? I don't...
not even going on to the problem of fixing it, but I think just where some of that ideal comes from. Like, think about when people first, like, when that institution of colleges were first invented, you know, it was like, it's this amazing source where you can just learn, like, the world's knowledge. Like, you can learn about anything, and the whole idea of, like, just creating this kind of, like, a valued thing. And that sounds really good in theory, you know, this whole idea of, like, look at all the world's knowledge that you can learn in this place you should go, you know? But, like... But it's to a point where, I mean, that's a beautiful ideal, but you're never going to have every teacher care about their topic. You're never going to have every curriculum be designed in a way that encourages that. Like, even though I think the ideal is really nice, like, it just comes down to the fact that you're going to have enough people that just don't care.
So I think there's two sides to this, or two fundamental issues. One is kind of going back to what you said, the myth of like these institutions being able to give you the world. Mm-hmm. Internet broke that myth. The second thing is a lot of these courses that we're taking that are kind of like the indoctrination courses of the institution's culture and mission statement. Those are handed to part-time faculty, and those part-time faculty are not paid well.
Yeah.
And basically, they're the fast food workers of these institutions. Do they have PhDs and master's degrees? Yes. Are they teaching what their specialty is? 5 out of 10 times they don't. And that's the problem. So you're not giving them the feeling of doing something. So then you're giving us the feeling of not being able to complete something or attain something or learn something. So it's kind of this revolving door where once again, like, I find myself in a lot of these classes. I'm a communications major, and there are some classes that are a joke because they don't give it to us in a way that they feel they can give it. Yeah. They're handcuffed. And this is the same thing with high school too, right? Right. Like these high school history teachers, they don't want to talk about this stuff. They want to talk about real history, but they can't.
Yeah. And every history class I ever had in high school, we'd always get up to like the 1800s, and that's as far, because you always get behind. You never get to like actually like relatively modern history. It's always like, because they always tell you have to start from like the beginning of time or the beginning of American history and go through all this stuff, and they're limited, I guess.
It's just so unfortunate because like I know a lot of people just want to go through the motions and get a degree, and I do want a degree, and I will go through the motions for it, but I'm really interested in learning these things. And it's so frustrating that I'm giving them money and I have this active interest in learning the thing that I'm supposed to be learning, and I just don't get anything back from that. And I feel like all your points were valid. Like, it is given to people who are not paid enough and who are not pursuing their passions in their profession at the current time and all these things. But there has to be some level of apathy in that, like, because we're all so used to it. We're all so like willing to put up with it because that's just what you have to do in our system of education. I feel like there needs to be some way that this can either be, why has every single college student taken at least one class like this? Like, that's not okay. That's a really big problem. That's money. Yeah. And in these bigger colleges, I'm not in a huge college. We all went to community college. We're throwing money away. And I cannot imagine like somebody who goes to Ohio State or somewhere
Which
bigger.
I almost did. I almost took all my credits there, and I was like, community college. I'm gonna
just when you're just throwing money at it. And there has to be a better way for this to work.
I mean, there kind of is, though. Like, in Europe, it's a lot more streamlined. We might even have some people listening from Europe who are like, duh, yeah, of course. Like, we have some answers here.
If there are, they should comment.
Yeah, and you should take us in, and you should let us go to school there.
And send us questions.
Send us questions. Send us things to research. Anyway, no, but yeah, you have a thing to say.
Yeah, so what I love about this conversation is that we all feel like we have thrown money away.
Yeah.
With this, you know what I mean? You two go to a state institution, I go to a private institution. Mm-hmm. And in theory, I pay more for it. And I will say, they give more liberties to these professors to kind of like, you know, think a little bit, you know, stay to our curriculum, but kind of you can do your own thing, just make sure that's within the lines. Mm-hmm. But it still feels like a waste of money.
Yeah.
And I went to private high school, and they were allowed to do a little bit of different things, and it still felt like it was a waste of money. You would think universities would want to expand on thought, theory, and practice, and really test your skills. And what we're running into is we have the internet, we have all these other things. You're not giving us anything new. I think they need to do more involved classes where they kind of...
They need to teach you how to think.
And
they can't just throw knowledge at you. They can't
throw a book at us.
A bulleted list of facts. They need to teach you how to research, like for history majors. Teach them how to go through and research. Teach them how to go through historical documents. Teach them how to learn something. Yeah. In my case, I want to learn critical thinking is important for that too.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
But in my case, I really need critical thinking. I need to know how to look at something, be wrong 10,000 times, and then keep going back to it and get it right and trying it in different ways. And that's not...
Well, critical thinking, I think, is something that should be taught more on a basic level, even in elementary schools, which I feel like, again, is a kind of a missed opportunity.
Oh, that has so much to do with how we teach math, and that's an entirely other conversation.
And it is not made for us sitting here, too, by the way. It's not made for a woman or a man of color. They make sure that we're not good at math and science.
Yeah, because
but that's another conversation.
It's the narrative, right?
That's another conversation.
That could be a whole other topic.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on that.
Just little microaggressions.
But just the idea when you look at, like, you know, and of course the elementary and middle school teachers have even less rope.
It's
because
crazy.
They're so tied down to these curriculums and to these specific standards that they can't even barely introduce things like that because they have to.
Part of that too, I'm sure, is because to be an elementary school teacher, you don't need to have as much rigorous education as you need to be a higher level teacher, which means that I don't know. Oops, there's time. Do you want me to finish my statement?
Yeah, finish.
Okay, well, I feel like critical thinking is really, really important, and learning critical thinking is important. When teachers who are teaching little kids don't have critical thinking, and they're the same people go, oh, I just don't get math. You know, like, oh, I'm illiterate. You know, that's not okay if I'm illiterate. It shouldn't be okay that you don't understand basic math, and you can't pass that on. So if the people who are teaching kids are the same people who shrug off important things like the rigorous logic that math has to teach us, or like other things like that, then what kind of processes are they passing along? You know what I mean?
If you're going into early childhood education, don't go in there to be a babysitter. Be a mentor. Be someone that can teach us to overcome these boundaries they set in front of us. I had such good early childhood education teachers. It was ridiculous.
And maybe if that happens, we won't have to pay for worthless classes in college.
And maybe most people will graduate high school, and then you won't have to complain about how they're in the system and you have to pay for taxes.
And then they'll go to prison, and then you won't have to complain about that either, like if they don't go to prison.
So. I mean, but your tax money's going there, so either way you win, I guess.
Man, I feel like we just like laid out a speech.
Unless they become a comedian, in which case hopefully they don't get shot down for not being politically correct, and that ties it all together.
And then maybe if they get shot down for being politically correct, the person that shoots them gets the death penalty.
And it all would have been fixed if I didn't have to pay for these 2 credit hours for this worthless class I'm in.
Slim Jesus
is white.
Oh.
What have we learned today, everybody? Oh, I guess I go first then. Yeah, I guess it comes down to there is a balance when it comes to political correctness, but it can be spun negatively no matter which way. It just kind of comes down to being thoughtful about who is saying the thing and for what reasons they're saying the thing.
What I learned today is that the death penalty it doesn't equate to justice.
College sucks.
And there was Amber with the mic drop.
Amba J over here.
At Amber J.
Yeah, oh yeah. Would we like to reiterate our Twitters if you would like to send us questions? Amber, you can
Let
go
me
first.
try. It's at AMBAHJAY.
But I wanted you to say it again.
At Amber J.
You can follow me on Twitter at Black Celtic, BLVCKCELTIC. Wow, I didn't know how to spell my Twitter handle.
You got it though.
But yeah, so Justice for Mike Brown is my header.
You can read about him being sad about Starbucks.
You're gonna air out all my dirty laundry?
I just complain about the bus a lot. I mean.
Or you can follow the best Twitter account out of all of us, which is Pogie, POGIE _JOE. But I like I said, you can send any questions to any of us.
You can ask me about Jesse, and I'll answer truthfully.
It'll just probably be us saying yes.
Yes, like at the same time, in sync.
But also we now also have a SoundCloud. So if you look up, what's that? Yeah, can you not? I forgot the name of the podcast. Yeah, I should probably look it up. It's if you look up "Can You Not" SoundCloud on Google, I can't remember the exact URL. Probably should have looked it up.
I wish I could express to you Jesse's shocked face.
Jesse had a pretty shocked face. Ultimately, can Joe not? Can I not?
Can you not?
I can't.
No sound effect, Jesse?
I got nothing.